Jesus.
And we're live again. So hello everybody, welcome back. We have another half hour. We're going to engage. Is it half an hour that what we have? We have another 18 minutes to let people out on time. But we've done much of the work already for this section, is to talk about these particular ways of engagement. Now there's another set of tools in here that we'll move to, and then we'll use those as the basis of a plan, an action plan. It's not an action plan that we can finish here. It's an action plan we're going to take with us as we consider how are we going to live the gospel message in our communities. How are we going to preach, go out and preach, and make disciples of all the world? And because all the world is different from us. Remember when the apostles, after Pentecost, went out into the streets. They spoke, and everybody said, wait a second, they're preaching something, they're telling us something, but each of us hears them in our own language. Imagine that, which means they also heard them through their own cultural lenses, if they truly heard them. And thousands were converted. Integration versus assimilation. So in the text, page 30, by integration we mean that all cultural, ethnic communities are to be welcomed to our church institutions at all levels. That means that if you have a parish pastoral council that is all white, but you have a community that is very diverse, with Vietnamese and with Koreans and even Laotians and Chinese and Indians and everybody, where would an opportunity for true assimilation, for true integration, where would an opportunity for true integration present itself? Parish Pastoral Council, all white. Does it represent the people that it serves within the parish? If it doesn't, then as a pastor you might say, or as a parishioner you might say, why not allow some Vietnamese to sit on the Parish Pastoral Council? Because that's a leadership group. That's a group that can speak to my needs and the needs of my community. So integration at all levels. They are to be served in their language when possible, and their cultural values and religious traditions are to be respected. So what would be a religious tradition that is present among the Vietnamese that is not present in the United States Anglo culture? Is there one? Is there something that Vietnamese do that people in this country do not do in terms of a religious observance? I can think of something that Hispanics do that most white Caucasians, European Caucasians, Three Kings Day is the celebration of January 6th. In Texas, even though I come from a country that has many Hispanics, it never occurred to me that Three Kings Day was a thing until I was older. You know, because I lived in a family culture and in a social culture that was not inclusive of Mexicans. But though I had Mexican friends, I never bothered to ask them if they had any religious observances that were different from mine. You know, it wasn't until much later I was like, wait a second, how did Three Kings Day slip past me? Anything in the Vietnamese
in Vietnam, we have like in land season, we have meditation about the passion of Jesus. We sing very sorrow song about the passion, meditation from Jesus passion, like that. Every depend on, but every week or every day we go to church to like that. And even though some Vietnamese when came to living in America, they still we still to keep that traditional like that. I think American another country don't have like that.
Okay.
Yes.
So, but if I don't know about that, I should.
Yes.
Especially if you're in my parish community.
Yeah.
In my parish community. Especially if we are in the same parish community.
Yeah.
If I'm in yours and you're in mine, and we are in the same community together. Beyond that, we must work toward mutual enrichment through interaction among all our cultures. And interaction is key. Invite me to the events that are held in the Vietnamese worship.
Yes.
And come to the events. I will invite you to the events that are held in my modes of worship. Because again, we're worshiping the same Christ.
Yes.
So integration versus assimilation. So I'm not trying to change you into me. I want to have an authentic encounter of cultures, to be truly integrated. And we have that here. If you notice at all our graduation ceremonies, for our viewing audience at home, scroll down on the YouTube channel and go to the last graduation ceremony. Now we have a Hispanic schola, we have a Vietnamese schola.
Yes.
Our graduation ceremonies seem to be very inclusive of the cultures we have, because people get to participate in their own way. So a spirituality that supports intercultural ministry and reconciliation. We talked about that. The process of ecclesial integration and inclusion. This is, if you're reading the chapter, this is as follows. There are three things that are discussed: Catholic identity, belonging, and ownership. And we're going to jump straight to what those mean in terms of 5 principles that those who put together this book came up with. And those 5 principles are this, and these are your takeaways. Everything that we studied for 5 weeks comes down to these principles for achieving ecclesial integration. What we studied for 5 weeks shows us the path that leads us to this point, and this perhaps is something we can do going forward. The first is to articulate a vision of ministry based on ecclesial integration. So to articulate a vision of ministry. And that's what we've been doing here. We've been speaking, we've been talking, we've been articulating. To call it into being by saying it. And at which point somebody else will say, well, what do you mean by that? And then you have a dialogue. Foster the enculturation of the gospel in all cultures. What's that mean? To foster the enculturation of the gospel in all cultures.
Taking, I think I discussed about this already, taking the material or the cultural material objects or even certain aspects of the spiritual elements of a culture, and as long as they can grow with Catholic doctrine, somehow see if we can incorporate them for the purpose of evangelization.
Dr. Schultz? Plan with the people, not for the people. How many people have ever you worked in, with groups and you're saying, okay, how do we incorporate the Mexicans into our parish? And so everybody in the room talks about how to incorporate the Mexicans. Yet, there is no Mexican in the room to talk about how he or she would like to be incorporated. I've been to a number of meetings that start out like that. You know, we have a new community of Bosnians coming into St. Louis. We like to involve them in our events. Let's plan for them and figure out a way to involve them. But there's no Bosnian in the room to ask, you know, whether or not it would even be appropriate to serve meat that is not halal or kosher. For instance, let's invite them to a barbecue. We'll have meat from a store that they can't eat, but we don't know that because we didn't ask. Can you actually eat this meat? Plan with the people, not for the people. Any other thoughts on that? How can we plan with people? If we have new Vietnamese coming,
How about inviting them to the meeting?
inviting the meeting is an excellent way, but then making space for their observations to transform the kind of meeting that one has. Because it's one thing to invite others to a meeting, but if you don't make space for their discussion, for their observations, for their for that transformative experience or encounter to occur, then you're still planning for them. Perhaps. We have a meeting here. Everybody's been invited. We have space to transform ourselves. We've played with that a bit in the foreign theater we've done, you know, where people were able to engage one another in an authentic manner. Broaden your understanding of ministry groups, programs, and structures, and cast a bigger net. We need to broaden our understanding. Maybe we exist in a paradigm that says a ministry group needs to be a certain way. Is there a certain way to do youth ministry?
I think this is for the leaders in the parish should not pay more attention for this community or another community. So because in the parish in the US, we have so many international community. So we should respect each community in their own culture. And we see that is a blessing. That is the blessing from God. And we have the more international community, the more we have make the more energy for the community, for the parish in general. And if the leader in the parish have a tendency to go to join some more activity in this community and sometimes not to join another community, is somehow make a distinction between their own in their own parish. That is I think that we need more understand about the ministry about that.
You're smiling, sister. Do you have a thought?
Yeah, for me, I think it's American very blessings that you have a lot of cultures and you also listening to them and welcome them, and you have you also give them the time to express themselves and whatever they have from their country to bring here to them to you, and you also show it's special and unique that you need them to learn from you. That's from your own culture. And even though you accept them, but they still see you as the model for them to get you, and you didn't reject their culture, or you didn't say any word to avoid them publicly or personally. I don't know, but probably I know you probably welcome a lot of cultures here around the U.S. And when I travel to another states, and I see a lot of person from the parishes, from Indian, from India, from Colombia, from China, and from Philippines, from Laos, some way. They all came to one church and celebration, and then the priest really respect them. And you can see a lot of people, different cultures during the Christmas time. When you travel at that time, or when you serve in the parish at that time, you will see a lot of parents from different cultures And when you talk to them, I didn't. Sometimes the accent is difficult for me to understand. They speak English, but I could not understand. But the priest over there, they try to make nice and connect with them. So how can bring them to the mass during Christmas so they can have more conversation and learning about your culture.
I have idea that is if I a leader a group or a parish is I think about what is my role, what is my mission, that is bring the gospel to the people and bring salvation, God's salvation to people, so that not I bring Vietnamese culture to American or teach Vietnamese about American culture like that. But my goal is gospel.
Right.
So whatever I do, maybe my people they are speak Spanish. They working in the program or their hobbies is Spanish like that or Vietnamese or another. But what is their goal? Even though the American or Vietnamese, but my purpose is gospel. So I need to make the balance or the encounter between gospel and culture.
That's it. No, I mean, that's excellent. Christ told us what? He said,
Yes.
preach the gospel to all peoples.
Yes.
Preach this good news. That's really all we have to do. And for us to be able to transcend culture, to engage culture, to work through culture in order to bring the gospel to others is key.
Yes. And another idea is look like Mother Teresa, Calcutta. She work another culture. She working, but because she work by she love them, and she serve. She serve some. Sometimes we don't need the culture, but when we love and we serve, maybe I don't. Every people understand. When I serve people, they understand. I don't need to speak, but if I work, I serve them, they understand me. I think it's
Right. Well, we have a faith. We preach the faith. We live the faith. People see that. Yeah.
And going back, connected to that with the solidarity, I think when we get to that level, that makes work. I think would make mission more possible. Well, it makes mission possible, and then people will have an understanding of their own mission and their own integration. And I think that would expand towards evangelization, and then getting to the 5 principles. I think when you have mission and solidarity, I think you will be able to kind of discern where you're at, like those 5 principles. And I think for number 4, just in a negative way too, I think sometimes you have a group that's there and it's just static, and realize that either it helps you to see what needs to be redone, what's good and what's not so good, and sometimes things that maybe the group just doesn't need to be, like certain prayer groups or whatever that's in the parish not working, that you revamp it, or just you don't need that program. And I think it will help when there's more of an integration and more of that communion and the solidarity, that they have a self-understanding so that they could work within their parish model to see what's working and what things, like all that's good and things that might need to be tweaked a bit. Because unfortunately, a lot of times some places just throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, oh, it's not working, so they get a new program instead of just fixing a few things that need to be done.
Other thoughts? The 5th one is empower people from different cultures and ethnicities into leadership positions. We talked about that. But not for the sake of doing it, but because it's worthwhile to do. I mean, it would be something that would be worthwhile to be done. So I've been on many committees where there is a token member of a minority group. And the token member of the minority group is simply there as a window dressing. It's not allowed to do anything. She's not allowed to do anything that would be transformative. It's there to allow the group to resemble the diversity that it doesn't already, that it doesn't actually have. People who are brought in to serve on a committee who are not authentic representatives of the cultures out of which they come. It's possible for you to have a pastoral council that has a Vietnamese person on it, but the Vietnamese person has no interest in the Vietnamese community. The Vietnamese person has an interest in his or her social class among the white community, and therefore will do things on that committee that do not help or advance the Vietnamese persons that that person may represent. And if you've been on committees anywhere, you may have seen that. Daniel, if you've seen that, you're nodding your head.
Yes.
So, so it's not effective necessarily simply to populate the committee with like-minded individuals who all support the same agenda, even if they are from diverse, if they are racially or ethnically diverse.
Right.
What's useful and what's effective is to ensure that there's space in any leadership committee for somebody who actually has the needs of the people, that person represents that group or that culture, and in the front of his or her ministry on that committee or that group. If it's not in the forefront of his or her ministry or that group, then that person is not going to effectively represent the culture out of which he or she comes.
You can't confuse race with culture too, because if you have a Vietnamese community, you have a large community within your parish, and we need an Asian person, and you pick a Filipino, that really isn't.
No, right. And people will do that. They'll say, "Oh, well, any Asian will do," And the Filipino doesn't have.
Asian.
Right. The Filipino doesn't have any interest, and he may be a fifth or sixth generation Filipino in the United States.
Right. So there's a culture. Yeah. So even with the Hispanic community too. So if you have, let's say, you have a large Hispanic community, you happen to have, I don't know, a lot of Dominicans there, and you decide that, well, Maria's Puerto Rican, and her grandparents came from Puerto Rico, I don't know, 20 or 25 years ago. That's probably not a good representation for the Hispanic community in this specific instance, because most of the parishioners just got off the boat from the Dominican Republic. Yeah.
I was at a school that had a particular ethnicity once. I was on an accreditation team, and the school had a real crisis. All of its students were first generation members of that community. Its faculty was first generation, but it started to attract a lot of students who were third generation.
Mm-hmm.
The students who were third generation could not understand the language that was being used to teach the classes to this group that was coming out. So the community came together and they had to discuss how they're going to integrate this new kind of student into the school.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized they had to hire faculty that represented this new kind of student. They had to find staff positions and administrative positions that would foster the new culture that was coming in, and they had to actually engage in an authentic manner.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they made all of these decisions without anybody on the board who was a second or third generation student who would be coming in. But I mean, that was at least their initial conversation. Hopefully they continued those conversations with representatives of the target group, of the group that was going to make them bigger than what they were.
Right.
Okay, so these 5 things. So these are things that you'll think about for the remainder of your ministries. But you're going to come up with more than 5 things. I don't think 5 is an exhaustive list here. I think that there are other principles for achieving ecclesial integration that we could come up with if we thought about it. But I would like to give you one thing before we go, because we're just past time. Everybody in here is now an expert in intercultural competencies. At least you are more expert than everybody who did not come. So I would like to give you a certificate of completion. You've earned it. So this one, Eric. Sister Anna Mai Wen. Sister Anna. Thank you, sister. Definitely take pictures and send them to me. Sister Cecilia Min Wen.
She's not here.
She's not here? Okay, can you give it to her? Sister Juan? Who? Juan. Sister Juan. Thank you, sister. Sister Maria Tao Do?
She's not here.
She's not here.
You'll give it to her?
She's
Sister Juan Tran.
not here today too.
And also,
They're studying. That's fine.
Today.
So they missed the best one.
Yes.
It's the
They have
conclusion.
studied
That's fine.
today.
how to make them
Then
more
win.
Ah,
makeup class.
Well, the makeup class will be up to you to do it at lunch tomorrow. Brother Lick, done. Okay, brother Ian Hope. MSA.
MSA.
Always in this. Okay, we'll fix it. EU. Okay, we'll fix it. So it's a U, not an N. Okay, I'll ask, I'll ask Alicia to print a new one, and we'll sign it and give it to you. But hold on to that one for now as a place mark. Okay, brother Dan, Win. Brother Alexander Chung.
yeah.
Yeah, Chuck.
Chuck.
Chun.
The Vietnamese say from.
John.
Chun is
Yeah,
Chinese.
become Patrick Murphy. Daniel Valente. You know that? I don't think you didn't put the MSA. Sister Therese.
I'm here. Oh, who needs?
Now, she told me that she wasn't certain whether or not you used an E or an A, so she made two of them. Do you use E or A?
E.
E? Okay,
Yes.
that's fine.
Two of them.
She did. She should have made two over here. Tyler LaChance.
That's it.
Here. And everybody who takes this class and who completes the workshop online will receive one of these. Of course, you'll have your name on it and not Tyler's.
Dr. Tyler.
Oh, Dr. Tuna.
So, this is Building Intercultural Competencies for Ministers. We have 64 international students online, 20 students who live outside of this country and who are not from Eritrea, and 44 students who live outside of this country who are from Eritrea. So 64 students who are graduate students taking classes here at Holy Apostles. So rather than building intercultural competencies for ministers, we're building intercultural competencies internationally for lay persons, for religious sisters, for priests, for deacons, for whoever is our student. So if anybody in this room would like to participate in the online offering, Dr. Tulin will be teaching it. You can volunteer with Dr. Tulin, and you can engage online with all of the other students as leaders of that community. You would be very welcome to do so, and Dr. Tulin would very much appreciate your volunteering to do so. No requirement It is a culture of desired, not a culture of required. If you want to do so, please talk to Dr. Gould. Good night, and thank you. And if somebody would lead us in prayer. Anybody? Want to lead us in prayer? Okay.
Father and Son, Holy Spirit, Amen. God, we thank you for your grace to give us, and we ask you to give us more strength and help us to do your will. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now,
New Father and Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And good night.
Good night.
Remember, don't come next week. And thank you, everybody at home who's been watching. We will be moving through this workshop beginning October 16th and ending November 17th of the year 2017. God bless and good night.